some of the coastal states, the problem always has been trained manpower to man the boats. Now, if this can be done by an unmanned boat, that obviously helps.
What piece of advice do you want to give to the services when it comes to proving our innovation and indigenization?
So, Navy has certain advantages. Smallest of the services can move much faster. Decision making is much faster. Every officer is an engineer.
There has been a rise in India's unmanned systems when it comes to the naval power.
The future would be, if not unmanned, it would be increasingly the manned-unmanned teaming, whether it is surface, subsurface or aerial.
Similarly, did Swavlamban had their focus on the drones aspect as well?
If we agree that the future will, if not be unmanned, but it will be increasingly teaming between the manned and the unmanned systems. So in the Navy, there are multiple cases for aerial drones, there are multiple cases for underwater drones.
No, but only in terms of the capabilities. If you think one startup really well used by the Navy.
Let me say this, and I say this with a lot of responsibility, that out of the Sprint winners, I would be very surprised if at least a dozen of them do not cross 1,000 crores turnover in the next few coming years. Things have been changing so fast that unless you decide to move fast to keep pace, you will always be playing catch-up.
The nature of naval warfare is changing fast. Today, innovation isn't just about building new technology. It's about staying ahead in a world where drones, unmanned systems, and AI are rewriting the rules at sea. The Indian Navy has been at the forefront, combining indigenization and innovation to ensure it remains a dominant force in the Indian Ocean region. Joining us today is Commodore Gulaya, former head of the Navy's Technology Development Acceleration Cell under the Naval Innovation and Indigenization Organization. He has been a driving force behind initiatives like Sprint and Swavlamban, fostering collaboration with startups and industry to accelerate cutting-edge solutions. In this conversation, we'll explore how India is building its innovation ecosystem, the challenges startups face when working with defense, and why unmanned systems, AI, and dual-use technologies are vital for the Navy's future. Let's dive in and see how India is navigating the future of naval innovation. So, without further ado, let's get started. Commodore Gulaya, welcome to Dive Publisher. It's an honor to have you here with us today.
It's a pleasure being here.
So today's conversation is going to be about naval innovation and how do we make more indigenization when it comes to naval platforms. But before that, I want to understand from you, why is it important in today's time, especially because we have the threat looming from China, the PLA Navy, and the Indian Ocean region.
So your question is, why is innovation important?
Why is naval innovation important?
I would say innovation is important whether for the Navy or for the industry or for anything and everything. In all walks of life, innovation is important. I mean, if the basic thing about innovation is finding something new or doing something in a different way, innovation has always been important. That's how progress happens, right? But in today's age specifically, coming to what you asked, if we see the fast pace of change of technology, technology is moving so fast that things get obsolete within a matter of years. If that be the case, then you have to... so if I can differentiate between... innovation is important. I think that's given. But institutionalizing innovation. One, creating a structure. So the Naval Innovation and Indigenization Organization, which was set up in 2020. So it's not that Navy was not innovating before that. In fact, I can name quite Commodore Paul Raj, you might have heard of, Arogyaswamy Paul Raj, who actually is the man who created MIMO. And I keep telling people this, where in various conferences that, have you heard of him? Surprisingly and sadly, not many people have. And I tell them that Google him. And if you're Googling him using your mobile phone, thank him. Because anything, whether it's 4G, 5G, so multiple in, multiple out. The patent for ME is now, of course, Professor Emeritus at, he went to the US. But the point is that the patent for MIMO in his name. So Naval, and before that, he's the man who made our first sonar. So Navy has been innovating for a long time. So 2020, they institutionalized innovation when the NIIO was set up. Here again, the differentiation was made between indigenization and innovation. And I keep saying this, that both are important. Indigenization is bringing to India something which already exists outside. Innovation is creating something anew. So that's important not only for the Navy. That's important for the industry. That's important for us as a country. That's important for everybody. When it comes to the Navy specifically, or the armed forces, not Navy, I would say the armed forces, the way technology is changing, the way warfare is changing, and we've seen this, whether it is Op Sindoor or the Russia-Ukraine conflict or Armenia-Azerbaijan, the things have been changing so fast that unless you decide to move fast to keep pace, you will always be playing catch-up. So that's one. The second thing, when it comes to institutional structure, so the organization which I used to head, the TDAC, or Technology Development Acceleration Cell, and I keep saying this also, in fact, people will accuse me of being repetitive, but it isn't the Technology Development Cell, it's a Technology Development Acceleration Cell. The operative word is acceleration. So technology development is one thing, but the policy framework, making it faster, inducting it, not only the funding, inducting it, adding it to the concept of operations, how will it be used, making it a part of your tactics. So the whole process is actually what is important. So innovation is a critical and a very important part of warfare, but not the only part. Then it has to be, and innovation need not be only technology. There can be innovation in tactics as well. There can be innovation in how you use the technology. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. I would say innovation is important in all fields. In the naval field, specifically, it is important because they know runners up in what. And more important than innovation, there has to be an institutionalized mechanism to encourage innovation.
Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a quick moment and ask for a favor. We noticed that 93% of you who watch our content regularly aren't subscribed yet. My promise to you is simple. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll keep working hard to bring thought-provoking conversations, incredible guests, and the topics you really care about the most. It is practically free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us, helping us grow, reach more people, and bring even better content your way. Thank you for supporting It Means the World to us. Now let's get back to the video.
Which were everybody was doing. So the army had set up the ADB. Navy had already much before that to set up the DOI, the Directorate of Indigenization, which was much before the DIO, which is the Defense Innovation Organization, which controls IDEX, was set up. So everybody was thinking about it. Everybody was working in parallel. So I would not really say that it was inspired by IDEX. But yes, once the NIIO was set up, we did work very closely with IDEX, especially for the IDEX Sprint, which you might be aware of. No, it was not inspired, but it was complementary more than, one being the product of the other.
Correct. So do you briefly want to speak about NIIO's initiative called Swavlamban, which when you mentioned 75 Sprint was a major part of it?
So the Swavlamban is the annual seminar of the NIIO. So a decision was taken. This was, I think, in fact, before NIIO was set up. This happened when the vice chief that time was Admiral Ashok Kumar. And what he felt was that instead of having various small seminars, because, this was during a seminar which he was there, which is the armament inspectorate, this thing. So armament seminar was there. So he says you have one on armament, then you have one on shipbuilding, then you have one on various things. You have one on indigenization. So he says instead of that, all these seminars should be combined into one grand seminar. So when the NIIO was set up, one of the taskings given to TDAC was also to coordinate this mega seminar, if I can call it that. And what he said was that you can have subsets in that. So one session will be on indigenization, one will be on armament, one will be on innovation, one can be on shipbuilding. So various sessions, but the seminar should be one. So this idea of having a combined seminar predates NIIO. In fact, the order setting up NIIO also in the duties assigned to the Technology Development Acceleration Cell, one of the duties was also to hold an annual seminar on innovation and indigenization, and the name Swavlamban was subsequently chosen for that. The first edition of Swavlamban, as you mentioned, saw the Honorable Prime Minister releasing the Sprint Challenges, which was the 75th year of independence. So to celebrate that as a part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we said we will develop at least 75 indigenous technologies. So the 75 challenges under Sprint were launched by the PM in the first edition of Swavlamban. And of course, after that, every year we've had a Swavlamban seminar.
75 is a massive number when it comes to the problem statements by the services in order to get some solutions from startups. How did you get these? Were you able to get these 75? Our conversation off camera was that you overcame more than 75. You had at least 108 of such solutions from the industry.
Yes, so the aim was at least 75, not 75. But 75 challenges were put out. And 108 were the development contracts which were signed, because also there were some which were the suo motu proposals from the industry under the open challenge category. And in some cases, more than one development partner was selected. Right. So for one challenge, you don't have to select only one winner. There may be two winners as well. So if that be the case, the total number of development contracts which were signed for Sprint were 108.
The important part of these, these problem statements and solutions, prototypes from the industry, is that how they are inducted with the services. How many do you think now, after you retired, and how many do you think the services will be able to retain and induct in operations?
Quite a few already. And in fact, if I can mention about some of the products, if not all, are also dual use.
Nice.
And actually they will have applications much beyond just the Navy. So if I can just give you random examples, autonomous weaponized boat swarms. Now, they can be used also by the coastal police in some of the coastal states. The problem always has been trained manpower to man the boats. And now, if this can be done by an unmanned boat, that obviously helps. There was a metal cutter, which was based on the ionic pulsate technology, which was made. That again can have uses not only for shipbuilding and shipbreaking, but can you imagine for the NDRF, for all the highways, if you have a car accident and you can just cut through the metal to get the person out.
Yeah.
So there were various applications. So I've given, there was this suit which was designed, which can take extreme temperatures based on nanotechnology, where you might have seen this Swavlamban, he put a fire this thing on himself while he was wearing the suit. So this, again, will be useful not only for firefighting. So essentially, it is aerogel based carbon nanotubes. So this is essentially a very good insulator. So it can be used as for IR masking, for against infrared. It can be used in water tanks. It can be used, if it is a good insulator, it can be used in housing.
Yeah.
When I say water tanks, in the cold areas, even if you see Punjab, what happens is that either the water gets very hot during the summers, unbearably hot, so you can't use it, or in the winters, it's nearly freezing. So if you have this very thin layer which is put inside the tank, and it insulates the water from either getting very hot or very cold, it will save energy if you can use it in the housing. So there are applications much beyond the Navy of what was developed in IDEX Sprint.
Do you have a number of how many have been inducted in Navy yet?
I wouldn't have the exact figure now because it's been 1 year since I took premature retirement. But I would say a vast majority of them, maybe about, I would say about 70, 80 of them should get inducted. If they have already got inducted, quite a few of them would have. The others, some of them are, some of the projects take longer. So they will get inducted. But yes, I would say about 70, 80 of them would get inducted.
How were they different to the problem statements of IDEX, let's say?
No, I don't think the problem statements were different. I think the way we went about doing it was slightly different. So what worked for Sprint was were 2-3 things. One, it was top driven. When I say top driven, so it's not only the naval hierarchy, which of course the naval hierarchy was fully on board. So it was since, as I mentioned, it was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister himself. So it was top driven and yet delegated to a very large extent. If you're having 108 cases and if you think that it'll be monitored at the apex level. So as OIC TDAC, I was trying my best to monitor all the cases, but you can't. So it is a nodal officer at the commander, or in some cases even at the lieutenant commander rank, who was actually dealing with one case, who was given a lot of authority to take what we call informed decisions. So there's a lot of delegation. So it was top driven, and yet implementation was ground up. So I think this is something which worked for Sprint.
Is there any particular startup that you think will be a success in the future, because you handle most of them as well? Most of them were inducted by you. Any particular startup which I know it's tricky to take names.
It's tricky in the sense, if I name one, then others will say, why didn't I name them?
No, but only in terms of the capabilities. If you think one startup, the product's capability is, dual use and could be really well used by the
Let
Navy.
me say this, and I say this with a lot of responsibility, that out of the Sprint winners, I would be very surprised if at least a dozen of them do not cross 1,000 crores turnover in the next few coming years. At least a dozen of them, and I would not name the dozen, but there are at least a dozen from the Sprint winners.
So one of the high ticket value item is the unmanned systems under the sea, and there has been a revolution specifically at sea when it comes to unmanned vehicles. Do you think Swavlamban were able to bring a lot of such projects and startups in order to work on the unmanned systems? And if there has been a rise in India's unmanned systems when it comes to the naval power.
So when it comes to unmanned systems, it's not only the subsurface. In fact, subsurface is probably the most complex when it comes to unmanned systems because of various reasons. Communication is the issue, detection is the issue. So underwater is a different domain altogether. But the future would be, if not unmanned, it will be increasingly the manned-unmanned teaming. So the component of unmanned will only grow, whether it is surface, subsurface, or aerial. And Navy, of course, has always prided itself on being a three-dimensional service, in the sense that we are in the air, we are on the surface, and we are underwater as well. So it's quite natural that even in unmanned systems, we are progressing, and we do see the application of all three domains: aerial, surface, and subsurface.
Do we see that coming up in our India's national security doctrine when it comes to maritime doctrine?
So it's already happened. It's already happened. We already have unmanned systems which have been inducted. In fact, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Navy had made the unmanned roadmap for the Indian Navy in 2021. And then the unclassified version of that, including the numbers and everything, has been shared for the industry. Because, you can have a roadmap, but unless, if you work in isolation, you have a roadmap and nobody knows what your roadmap is, it makes no sense. So the unclassified version of the roadmap, including the numbers of the industry then knows what to prepare for, was also released during Swavlamban itself. And that it's not been put out in the public domain. However, after verifying the antecedents of the firms, we do share it one-on-one with the firm, after, of course, the non-disclosure agreement and all that. So a number of firms we have shared our unmanned roadmap with, which specifies what are the kind of drones we are looking at, what are the purposes which we intend using them in all three domains again, and the numbers which are expected, and what are the roles they'll. So that is important, that we, one, have a clear roadmap, and two, you share it with the partners, the academy as well as the industry.
Similarly, did Swavlamban had their focus on the drones aspect as well?
Yes, because if we agree that the future will, if not be unmanned, future will not be unmanned, but it will be increasingly teaming between the manned and the unmanned systems. So if you're talking about emerging technology, I think some part of remote systems will come in. So in the Navy, there are multiple cases for aerial drones. There are multiple cases for underwater drones, both the tethered and the untethered variety. Tethered ones, of course, would be more limited in the sense, but they also have their utility. And of course, the surface, which I already mentioned. So all three kinds, there were a number of cases, not one, and different use cases. So, drone is a very, very all-encompassing term. So to give you specific examples, we also put out a case for a under 250 gram drone, which can be carried by the soldier. for the Marcos. So this is being done by Botlab Dynamics, which is in IIT Delhi, better known for the drone shows. So they're the ones who are the winner for this, and they're making that small tube-launched drone, very low cost, under 250 grams, and of course the endurance would be very, very less, but it's almost like an expendable thing. And on the other extreme, if you're talking about aerial drones, then the drone which can carry 150 kgs, which is being made by Saga Defense. So something which weighs less than 250 grams and something which can carry a payload of 150 kgs are, the extreme ends in the aerial. Similarly, on the surface, we have, as I mentioned, the autonomous weaponized boat swarms, the Matangi. Underwater, again, we had, as I mentioned, tethered as well as untethered this thing with a number of companies working on it. Planus was one which is working. Saga Defense was again working on underwater drones also. IROV was there for the tethered ROVs for underwater hull inspection as well as some of the work with the dexterous arms. So a number of companies and a number of cases. Yes.
Nice. So since we're speaking about innovation and emerging technology is a massive aspect when it comes to innovation, because that's what you need to cater. Artificial intelligence is at the center of it. How is the Indian Navy focusing on inculcating artificial intelligence in our subsystems and subsystems?
If you talk about artificial intelligence, in that machine learning, in that deep learning,
It's more about the data gathering and analysis of the data when it comes to
no, I would say
organization making.
I would say not only that. So even if you see, say, the generative AI, LLMs, which might be a very small part of it, but that also has utility. Maybe not directly in warfare, but administrative tasks. It can reduce your administrative load to quite an extent. Something as simple as LLM to SQL. So earlier you had databases where you had to know the SQL or the structured query language to query the database. Now you can ask questions in plain simple English. For example, if I take the example of the army, how many tanks in so and so location are due for refit in the next 3 months? And then the LLM knows what is the SQL command to give to the database and get the answer and give it to the user again in a normal everyday language. So starting from very, very simple administrative tasks, the systems are going to be autonomous and the degree of autonomy will only increase. So they will not be fully autonomous, but we are discussing the underwater domain. Now, underwater communication is an issue. Then obviously a very large amount of intelligence would have to be embedded in the system. Starting from image analysis to edge devices which have some degree of intelligence built into them, to, as I said, the administrative tasks, to operational use. So this is again another firm which I'm aware of, who's also IDEX winner, the Tarded Technologies, Bangalore base. So they were working on something which they said they want to move away from predictive maintenance to prescriptive maintenance. So before a thing fails, you say that it will likely fail in this time. This is easy. So AI has a year solution for that. You have a solution for that. Again, if we take the example of this firm only, they are already, you might not be aware, but the gas cylinder, unless you buy gas in your house, the gas cylinder they're using probably already the technology. So one way of doing it is that you say the life of a cylinder is 5 years, right? Which means that after 5 years, you discard that cylinder. There would be some cylinders which will fail before that. In 2 years, 3 years, there would be a leak in some cylinders. And there would be some cylinders which at the end of the 5-year life, you're discarding it, though it has a useful life left. So on the other hand, if you say that every time the cylinder comes in, you have various sensors which takes various parameters, compares it with what it should have been, and sees how much has the deterioration since it came in last. So then you can predict when it is likely to fail. Now, this is already being done by them for gas cylinders. It can similarly be done for rotor blades of helicopters. It can be done for the entire ship, various parts of the ship. When is this ball bearing going to fail? So that is something which is going to come in more and more in the future. It's already coming in.
The biggest challenge is the startup phase when, working with the Ministry of Defense and the defense industry is the fact that there aren't enough orders. How does NIIO cater to the problem where the startups are unable to raise funds and as well as produce in the quantity and the quality that the Navy expects?
So what we did in Sprint, which I think worked, one is that time it was not there. Now it's officially a part of the amended DAP. We started giving a minimum order quantity or the MOQ. And now in the amended DAP, it's called the minimum pilot order quantity. So that means at the time of initiating the case itself, we upfront told them that we'll buy at least these many systems. So, what is normally called the value of death? That means the startup fails or folds up between the product being made and the orders being received.
Between TRL 6 and 7, there is a value of death,
which is, yes. So,
where the innovation fails and
innovation succeeds, but the firm packs up before the orders are placed. And especially in defense, the timelines can be quite long. So this is something which we had discussed with the IDEX also and the MOD also. So if you see the amendments to the chapter on innovation in the defense acquisition procedures, the amendments came out in April 22. Just before, and we were the first of the block. We took advantage of that and launched Sprint. They have compressed the timelines for IDEX cases, and later it was extended to TDF cases also, quite substantially. There'll be single stage composite trials. The need for quantity vetting and scaling has been done away with. You don't have to have consultation with other agencies. Timelines are very, very, which has helped induct things much faster. My only suggestion would be that, if something has worked, then why don't you institutionalize it?
Take it seriously.
Not take it seriously. Make sure that becomes the norm. If it has been shown that something can be done in a few months instead of a few years, then henceforth the new normal should be a few months. I say this not only for IDEX cases. IDEX cases, as I told you, a number of changes have already been made and they are effective. But even if you talk about, what people call the emergency procurement or fast track procurement. So I keep saying that if emergency procurement is
a normal procurement,
why call it emergency procurement? So if till delegated financial powers, which is 300 crores as of now for the vice chiefs, under the delegated financial powers, let that be the normal procurement route. If procurement normally takes years, and if you see that in emergency procurement, it can be compressed to a few months, then shouldn't that become the new normal? Shouldn't that be a norm rather than an emergency measure? Of course, there would have to be caveats. So possibly you could say that this will only be applicable to Indian companies or Indian firms or Indian startups. You need to have some caveats like that. Okay, it will not be allowed for imports. But an Indian startup, so that will be, again, creating a win-win. The services gain because they get the products faster. They can, as we discussed, the technology is changing very fast, so the timelines need to be compressed. The startups gain. And more importantly, the nation gains. When a number of startups come up and they're successful, then the entire ecosystem comes up. So that is something I wish we could change.
How should the Ministry of Defense do hand holding for these startups and get them to be the industry champions? If there was one piece of advice you would give to the ministry in order to change their systems to bring out more industry champions.
When a war starts, you need hundreds and hundreds and thousands of drones. We've seen what's happening in Ukraine, especially if the war is,
Prolonged.
It does not make sense to have thousands of drones already inducted, and especially the offensive ones. I'm not talking about the ones for surveillance, the kamikaze drones, for example, and lying, because finally every product also has a shelf life, right? So it doesn't make sense. It's not cost effective to induct them in very large numbers. And yet, at the same time, when the push comes to shove, you would require them in huge numbers.
Yeah.
Right? So, or what we call the surge manufacturing capability. So this is a dilemma which you have to overcome. That means your capacity,
ability to manage the supply chain,
ability to surge manufacture or just ramp up production very fast
when
required is critical. So it is not a very efficient way of doing things that you induct them and then, after 5 years they get de-inducted without ever having been used. Now, what is the way around? And MOD is already doing quite a bit about this. Now, the way around is that you need to have excess capability than what your immediate requirements are. To have that excess capability and to have it profitable, there are only two options available. One is it should have a dual use.
Yeah.
Which means that it's used not only by the defense. Of course, it will not be exactly the same system, but if a substantial part of it is
The platform can be same, but the use
agricultural drone or a drone which can drop munition can be quite similar, right?
but not every system can be
Not,
dual
not
use.
every system. So also, that's what I'm saying. So one option, of course, is if feasible, have a multitude of users. The problem in defense is that there's one buyer and there's one seller.
Yeah.
It becomes a problem, right? So if it has applications not only for the Navy, but for the Coast Guard, for the MHA, for the NDRF, for the firefighting, depending on the specific use case we're talking about and the specific product we're talking about. So multitude of users and civilian applications. Till now, what I've named are all still security agencies, even in MHA, the CAPFs. That plus the civil users will give you that capacity to manufacture. Second is exports.
Yes.
Exports. So you manufacture and you export, and when the so that then your automatically your manufacturing capability goes up. So there are a number of options, and MOD has IDEX also encourages. There are quite a few times you would have seen when the foreign delegations come, they're introduced to these startups, and their meetings are facilitated. So IDEX is doing quite a bit. But exports is something which the government has been, you've seen, our exports have gone up, I think, 30 times in the last decade or so. 30 times is huge. 30 times is huge, and I think we've not plateaued out yet. It might go by another 30 times the way things are going.
Agreed.
And that is necessary and that is important.
So agreed that the exports have gone up, but we still aren't exporting that critical, the critical subsystems when it comes to our exports. It's still, we're exporting things which aren't as critical as the let's say the chip of the drone, for instance.
I wouldn't agree that we are doing only low level stuff. We are also doing quite a few, very, very innovative. Again, we are talking about two separate things. One is the component level. We're getting into the global supply chains.
Yeah.
Most people don't know this, and most people are not aware. Who's the largest importer of Indian? So whom do our exports go to? Defense exports. Which country do they go to?
Indonesia?
The US?
The US?
Yes.
Oh.
Our largest exports are to the US. Most people, when I ask these questions, they think that it might be a country in a neighborhood or maybe a country in Africa. So one is the component level thing. You got into the global supply chains. So you are making components which are then a part of the one of the subsystems in the entire system. The second is complete system itself. So both these things,
the US getting the complete systems from India?
No. US is mostly getting the subsystems from India. So once you get into the global supply chain, then you have to keep moving up the value
But
chain.
that is more about saving cost, I feel, that they are trying to import from us.
I agree. But it is not only about saving costs, it is also about
Our capabilities.
our capabilities.
And
that
the fact that we're reliable enough to, export to the US.
I don't think after Sindoor, at least anybody has doubts globally. Not only in India, anybody has doubts about the reliability of Indian products.
Yeah.
It's
only gone up, especially in the Europe.
So they're now battle proven. Some of the things have come out in the public domain. Some of the things have not come out in the public domain. But the fact that Indian startups can deliver and can deliver things which have been proven to be effective, I think is well demonstrated post Sindoor.
So when it comes to our indigenous innovation, what is our level of collaboration with international players, any OEMs or any international players? That
quite a few. Quite a few. So I think they're the only one who have been mentioned by name in both the joint statements between the India and the US during the Prime Minister's visit, last two visits to the US. So they are into sensors, low light sensors. They've been working, they've signed an agreement, I think, with General Atomics. Yes, also Sagar Defense is also mentioned in one of the joint statements. They have also signed an agreement. So they're increasingly, it is not only about, till now it was also, we're going up, as I said, in sub-components. But at the same time, a lot of collaboration is also taking place. IDEX, we have moved on to the INDEX, which is, the problem statements are jointly given out by uh, the INDEX problem statements also were launched, I think, in the second edition of Swavlamban, where the US ambassador to India was also there for the launch of the problem statements were launched then. So if you see BrahMos, for example, which again has given a very good account of itself in Operation Sindoor, that was a collaborative this thing between Russia and India. Now, if you see the Indian contribution to it when it started off to now what it is, so it has only gone up. So that will happen. Once you start collaborating, even if you start, so when you say that, it's only very small things will become bigger. You need to start walking. You will then run. You will then, and this is not a play on words, then sprint. But yes, a beginning has been made.
The good thing is that the deficit has gone down when for import-export deficit has gone down when it comes to our defense industry.
Yes, but not only that. That is one of the main reasons, but I don't think it's primarily economic. It's about, your the strategic autonomy, so to speak. Not only in defense, the supply chain and how critical it can be, I think came out quite, not only in India. Globally, people realized that during the COVID time, right? When the supply chains were interrupted, and having reliance on only one source also is, I don't think, a very good idea. So diversifying your supply chains, having Atmanirbharta is important. Yes, for defense it can be critical, but it's important again across the sectors.
So India being a rising economy, a $4.5 trillion economy at the moment, and we aim to be a $10 trillion economy by 2035. What do you think how will the innovation in defense lead us to the stage, sir?
Economy is one thing. So, sectors which I think have a lot of scope for growth in the future. So when you reach that figure, you have to know what are the building blocks to that. So I would say, and I think the government has been emphasizing the right things. So obviously a lot of thinking has already gone into it at the appropriate levels. So one is defense, right? That is a lot of emphasis has been given to that. The second thing is the maritime economy. So whether it is, when I say maritime, I'm including
Ports.
port-led development is, the Sagar Mala or shipbuilding, shipbreaking, everything. Again, globally, there are enough examples of countries where shipbuilding itself has raised the economy, whether it was Japan post the Second World War, or China, of course, was a later entrant, Korea, South Korea, which, so countries which focused on the maritime sector for, giving a boost to the economy. Shipbuilding that's why it's called a mother industry, because that has the effect it has on the ancillary industry is huge. So defense sector is going to be big. Maritime sector is going to be big. The deep tech, if I can call it that. So whether it is quantum, AI, so that's where the National Quantum Mission. Drones are going to be big. So drones, as it is, you're aware the emphasis which has been given. So all these things which will play a major role, I think, have been identified. And a number of policies have come out to give focused attention to these. Pharmaceuticals, and so on.
Would Indian defense industry be able to fulfill our requirement for a $10 trillion economy when it comes to our defense budget increasing to also to a $200 billion, and then maybe the capital acquisition to another $50 billion?
So people have been, I've often heard people say this, that our defense budget as a percentage of GDP. And quite a few people say that, it should be at least 3%. And so the old debate about, the guns versus butter debate has gone on. But there are 2-3 things which you have to see here. One is, I think the right metric would be the central government expenditure rather than as a percentage of GDP. But even if you take it as a percentage of GDP, the fact that your GDP itself is growing and growing at a very, very comfortable rate means that even if as a percentage of GDP it remains fixed, your actual defense budget is going up.
Yeah.
So in real terms, even after catering for the inflation, you will find that your defense budget is going up and is going up substantially.
No, but my question was, is the Indian defense industry capable to cover that budget that increases as well?
Oh, most certainly. Most certainly. And in a market-driven economy, if it is not capable, capability will be created.
Hmm.
In the sense, it's a question of demand and supply, right?
Well said. So when it comes to innovation, defense innovation, I see Navy doing the most out of three services. If there was a piece of advice you want to give to the three services right now in order to enhance our innovation, you like before our conversation started, you mentioned the aspect of mindset change when it comes to innovation. What piece of advice do you want to give to the services when it comes to improving our innovation and indigenization capabilities?
No, I can't really give any advice to the services. I'm sure the people who are there are well aware and are doing what is the right thing to do. But so you mentioned that, the Navy has been the most successful. I wouldn't comment on that either which way, if you all know the truth. But anyway, jokes apart, Navy has certain advantages. Navy has certain advantages in the sense, one being the smallest of the services, it can move much faster. Decision making is much faster, right? At the same time, now, of course, it wasn't there in our time, but now anybody who joins the Navy is the minimum qualification for joining the Navy is BTech, right? So every officer is an engineer, which means we're technically
More
not only our officers, even our men.
Hmm.
The Navy is more technology intensive, so everybody understands technology better, right? So these are the advantages which the Navy has.
That adds a lot of advantage.
Yes, but then the advantages which the Army has. For example, the Army is much bigger than the Navy is. So the orders, finally, if you said that, how do the startups become, the champions? For that, the kind of orders which you would need would come from the Army has a lion's share of the budget. Plus, the requirements are huge because of the sheer numbers, right? How many drones will Navy buy as compared to, say, how many drones the Army will buy?
But when it comes to capital acquisition, Navy always has more procurement when it comes to it.
No, so what I was coming to is, you said, what's the advice I can give? I can't give any advice, but what I'm saying is that you have to recognize, one, that each service has its advantage.
Got it.
And if you're talking about the era of jointness, then one is, can you learn the lessons from the other about possibly, and it's not even required, the requirements of each service are different. The decision making in the Army, for example, cannot be what it is like in the Navy due to a number of reasons. However, the fact that you're moving towards jointness and the fact that each service has its advantages can be leveraged. So, without naming the organization, I'd spoken to one of the sister services when I was in TDAC. What I told him is that, so we were having a casual conversation. So he says that to get this case through, it'll take me at least 2 years. I said, I can do it in 2 months. He said, but my problem, I said, I'll get it. But how do we place orders? Because our numbers do not justify. So it's that you need to talk to the within service, and I'm sure they're already doing it. You need to talk to the startups join. If a startup knows that the Navy will buy 3 of these systems, but the Army will buy 6 and the Air Force will also buy 2, it becomes that much easier for him to even raise venture capital. But if he goes to the Navy and if he says, okay, finally your requirement is of 2 systems, it might not be worth his while to invest that much. Or even if he's convinced about the idea, the money from the market will not come in. So each service has its advantages. Each service has its disadvantages as well. So you have to recognize what are your strengths. You have to guard against your weaknesses. Learn from the best practices in the other services and collaborate.
Roger. So one question that came to mind while you were mentioning about the mandatory BTech level for all naval personnel was that, do you think when it comes to our human resource and services, do you think a science background always helps them in making better decision in terms of what kind of innovation needs to be done and what kind of R&D, for example, R&D directorates in different services? Do you think this is an added benefit when it comes to making a decision in innovation?
I again have very strong views about this and maybe slightly radical views. So when we were in NDA in our time, we were the last batch which joined after 11th class, right? So we were the last batch which joined after 11th, and whether you were doing, in those days, we used to either do BA or BSc in the 3 years in NDA. So regardless of what you were doing, you learned all subjects. That means though I was doing BSc, we still had military history, we had geography, we had Hindi, we had workshop, we learned also how to, weld. and carpentry.
Mhm.
So, and somebody who was doing BA also studied mechanical drawing. So I think what it gave us was a very broad-based education, uh, not an expert in one particular field, but a basic understanding of everything. So I do think increasingly this is being realized that, even if you see the IITs and all that, they have realized that liberal arts are possibly as important. Uh,
When it comes to creativity.
yes.
Hmm.
So we come back to the same thing. Innovation is not only about technology. It is about technology, yes. It is also about the use cases. It is also about how to apply the technology. It's about tactics. And I don't think you can plan operations well unless you have a good understanding of military history, for example. So you cannot, you need to be technical, yes. Can you be only technical? No.
So this has been a very insightful conversation on the subject of how we could, bolster our innovation in maritime and sea service as well. But before we end this conversation, I've got two personal questions, if you allow me, sir.
Yeah, please.
First is what
Whether I answer or not is another thing.
I'm sure you would, because these are interesting questions for people to learn more about themselves as well as you. First question that I ask all my guests is, if there's a piece of advice you would give to your younger self.
If I had a chance to live my life all over again, and if I had a choice to make the decisions, uh, I think I would choose the same path. And I think there can be nothing more satisfying than this. I was in my entire family, I was the one who said we are from primarily a services family, right? My father was in the Air Force. His elder brother was in the army, and his younger brother was in the Navy. So tri-services family, so to speak. But eventually, I landed up joining the NDA, and no regrets. So my this thing would be that I made mistakes. I would love to make them again. I'm very happy with whatever decisions I took. Joining NDA was a fantastic decision. Navy was a wonderful journey. So my advice would be, don't take advice from the older me. My advice to the younger me is, don't take advice from the older me. Make your own mistakes, learn from your mistakes, live your life the way you want.
So that's an advice in itself, that you should continue making mistakes and learn from them and course correcting in order to be where you want to be.
Yeah.
Brilliant, sir. The last question to you is going to be about a book. Since this podcast is called Diary of a Publisher, I make sure to ask my guest about a book that changed their perspective on life. So if there's a book that you wish you would have read earlier in life, which book would that be, sir?
So I've had a policy now, I think, for close to 3 decades, where I read at least one book a week. So some of the places where, now, of course, on the net, it's, but in some of the places where I was posted, and my daughter also picked up this habit from me. So I said, why even looking at the book in the library? Because finally we'll run out of books. You might as well start from one end. And so read anything, but read. Fiction, non-fiction, whatever.
Could be about life, could be about spirituality, whatever that changed your perspective on life.
I know. I think far too many, and I can't possibly say that, this one book changed my perspective. So the book which I read it as a child, of course, not now. But as a child, I think the books which I really loved, which I enjoyed reading and also learned quite a bit from. So P.G. Wodehouse, which of course is not something which is life-changing, but the way he played around with words and this thing. Ayn Rand, I'm talking about all the books which I was introduced to in childhood. So Ayn Rand, Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. I do think, though my course-mates say this, that, I believe in Atlas Shrugged philosophy, but I'm not really sure if I do. A few years later, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is, I think, and again, the 2-3 books in succession by the same author. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad, followed by the Cash Flow Quadrant, followed by the Rich Dad's Guide to Investment.
It's more about financial power and autonomy, basically.
Yes. Yes. So I can't name one book. There have been hundreds of books. Books are something which I really enjoy. I love reading. I love writing. I've written a few books which, since you said as a publisher, so I published, in fact, a few with you also. Your father and me go back a long time. 2 of my books, I think, have been published by you. And I'm writing 2 books right
If you
now.
could, you want to share the title, we will put the link in the description as well, sir.
So the two books which were published with you were, one was called The Game Changer. That was a primer on game theory and its application to maritime operations, low intensity maritime operations. And the second one was a anecdotal biography, which I was one of the editors on, which was called The Admiral Who Shed His Vice. So that was about Admiral Chatterjee, who was the first admiral of the Indian Navy in the 4-star line. So got promoted, he was a vice admiral. Earlier, the CNS used to be vice admiral. So the day he to admiral, the newspaper headline said the admiral sheds his vice. So the play on words from there is what the book is named after. And the two books I'm writing right now, one is called The Horse Besides the Cart. It is the story of the naval innovation and indigenization organization as seen by me. So it will be a less of a historical account and more of an anecdotal account. And the next book is surprisingly not about the Navy, but about the Army. It's called The Architect of the 71 Victory. It's a book about General K.K. Singh, who made the master plan or wrote the appreciation for the 71 war. So that is something which I'm in the process of compiling, reading up more about him. He also happens to be my wife's grandfather. So there's a personal connect there as well. So there are two books which I've already published with you and two more books which I'm writing, which I think will be ready for publication sometime in the future.
So both your books will be down in the description. Please get your hands on it. And we look forward for your new books, the other two books which will be out in the coming year. And thank you so much for your time, sir. It's been a pleasure having a conversation with you. A lot of insights that I got. I'm sure the audience had a lot of insights as well.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It was great being here.
We look forward to having you again on another subject that you would probably master as well.
Certainly.
If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.